So I should share my screen and remember, Janice, about the screens as well, the screen.
Yes, so welcome to our call on the worldwide waste. Let me just hand it over to you straight away, Gerry. It's all yours.
Okay. I'm just going to. So hopefully the screen is sharing.
Yes.
Okay, good. Yeah, so about a 15-minute presentation and then hopefully some time for questions. So perfect. This is the mass of Mount Everest, about 150 billion tons of rock material. And in 1970, we were extracting from the earth about 25 to 30 billion tons. And by 2020, we were extracting 100 billion tons. So in 50 years, we went from 25 to 100 billion tons. And it's estimated that by 2050, we'll be extracting 170 billion tons from the earth, mining, digging, dragging up out of the earth. So in a couple of years, we'll be taking a Mount Everest every year to build our societies, to build our economies. And that is not sustainable. You know, whatever about CO2, our extractiveness, we've gone from consumers to devourers of the planet. 90% of that is waste. We don't use it, we just dump it. And it either pollutes rivers or lands or whatever. You know, it's not functional, that material. So the growth in CO2, modern humans are around about 300,000 years. And of all the CO2 that humans are responsible for, we had caused about 25% of it up until 1975. And between 1975 and 1995, we caused another 25%. And by 1995 and 2020, we caused 50%. So just in 50 years or so, all the CO2 damage that we have done, we've done 75% of it. This is exponential growth at its craziest and utterly most unsustainable. So how are we going to get out of this problem? We are most definitely not going to get out of it with technology. Technology is what got us into the problem in the first place. If we were all walking around with clubs, we wouldn't be doing near as much damage to the actual planet. Technology has never led to reduction in energy consumption and reduction in waste, certainly not in the last 250 years. So the UK Institute estimated that to deal with this problem, about 38% of the solutions will come from technology, but 53% will come from some behavior change and another 9% from large behavior change. So there's, you know, it's not electric cars that's going to save us. It's becoming more like the Danes and getting on bicycles and the Dutch and walking more and using our own energy and consuming less. You know, we are gone from consumers to devourers, and this has happened in the last 50 years. So looking at the electronic world, electronics are extraordinarily intense in their impact on the planet for their size and weight. So a typical smartphone will cause about 60 kg of CO2 during the manufacturing process. So manufacturing electronics, very, very intense. And about 80% of the total pollution, CO2 pollution, occurs in the manufacturing and distribution. A typical smartphone is about 160 grams. 80 grams of those are mined materials. To get those 80 grams of mined materials, we need to dig up 90 kgs of stones, gravel, tailings and slag, poisonous offshoots destroying rivers, water tables, etc. So 1,100 times the weight of the phone in materials to get, you know, to basically get those materials. Smartphones, 15 billion since 2007, 900 million tons of CO2, 1.3 billion tons of material, 204 billion tons of water, extraordinary amount of water to make a smartphone. This is a 1,900 litre water tank. How many of these do you think to make one smartphone? One of them, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. almost 14,000 litres of water to make one smartphone. And something like half to 2/3 of the world is moving into, if not already in a water crisis, will be in a water crisis within the next 20 or 30 years. These are extraordinary numbers. A laptop, 300 kg of CO2 in the manufacturing process, 1,200 kg of stones, gravel, tailing, and slag. And we see the growth, 1.4 billion tons, 5 billion smartphone or laptops since 2006. And it's, you know, it declined for a while, but this is what always happens. It says, oh, we won't need laptops anymore. We got smartphones, but now we're getting more laptops are growing again in the process. 7.2 billion tons of water. It's estimated it needs about 190,000 litres of water to make a laptop. So all of this is flushing through. So we build these things that are of an incredible cost to the planet, are extraordinarily energy intense, are extraordinary resource and material intense, and we get rid of them after 2 years. We get rid of them after 2 years, because that's how we maximize money in the modern world. That's how we create more wealth, by basically getting rid of these things. Waste is the business case of big technology. So over 50 million tons of e-waste every year, enough to build a Great Wall of China. In another 15 years, we'll be able to build 2 Great Walls of China. So e-waste is the fastest growing waste stream in the world. It represents about 2 to 3% of waste by volume, but 70 to 80% by toxicity. So the damaging stuff, the stuff that is going to never, ever go away, that's going to be around in thousands of years, that's e-waste. And we recycle much less than 20% of it in the process. So this is our modern world, the life of a machine. A vacuum cleaner, estimated, should last for 11 years to properly, you know, depreciate or amortize the actual materials. And they last about 6.5 years. Washing machine in 2011 should have lasted 17 years and was lasting 10 years. The washing machine in 2021 is lasting 6.3 years. And why is there this collapse in the life? Because we added digital, we added electronics. The more electronics you add to an environment, the shorter the life cycle of that particular product. A laptop should last 20 years. Our laptops are lasting at best 4.5 years. So holding on to stuff, if we want to try and do anything good, it's care for the materials, respect the materials that the earth is giving us. Data, which is driving a lot of these devices, because we're getting these more devices to store greater data. I mean, last year, or in 2020, we took more photographs than in the entire 20th century. And you know, the tech apologists, they keep telling us, oh, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. The data doesn't matter. You take as much as you want. Of course, that's the business case of getting us, addicting us to take more and more photos. So we'll store more and more stuff. It's estimated now something like 10 trillion photos are being stored in the cloud. And every year it's going to grow and grow and grow. 2010, 2 zettabytes of data. A zettabyte of data, if you were to print out 1 zettabyte of data, you'd need the paper from 20 trillion trees. So there's only 3.5 trillion trees on the planet. So you're not going to be able to print out that zettabyte. That's how big a zettabyte is. And by 2020, 50 zettabytes. By 2025, 175. By 2030, 612. And it's estimated by 2035, over 2,000. This is not remotely scalable. Already in Ireland, there was a report out yesterday, Ireland, a big tech centre, where databases are now, data centres are now consuming 14% of our electricity. Data centres in Ireland are consuming more electricity than all rural households put together in the process. 26% annual growth rate, and 90% of it is crap. In fact, only 5% of data is actively managed. But there's the whole culture. These are not data centers, they're data dumps. It's make money out of the crap. make money out of the waste, design products so that they become waste as quickly as possible, and encourage people to create as much waste as possible that they will then have to store, etc., in the cloud. It's the business model of waste. This study of hundreds of organizations found an average 14% of data useful, 32% of it useless, and 54% of it unknown, that the organizations didn't even know what it was. Most organizations I deal with don't even know how many computers they have, how many servers they have, let alone how much data they have in the process. So here, probability of data reuse, 5% on average probability after 90 days, 3 months after it's first been stored. So we are destroying the planet to create crap and to make a few people extremely rich in that process. The data dump or the data center are buildings now. You know, we used to create buildings that would last thousands of years. Now we create buildings that last 20 to 40 years. All these buildings, they talk about data centers, but the efficiency of the electricity, data centers, the electricity is just a relatively small fraction of the overall negative impact that data centers have. The steel and the cement that goes into these buildings, and they only last 20 or 40 years. The infrastructure, the electromechanical infrastructure, which will last 40 years in a typical factory, will be thrown out after 15 or 20 years in a data center, because we must have 99.9% uptime. The vast majority of people do not need to have instant access to their data that they're never going to access anyway, 95% of it. But we're all sold this, oh, you must have instant access, etc. Servers, 3 to 4 years. Many data centers will physically crush their servers, perfectly working servers, because security or whatever other bullshit we have. Data centers can drink between 1 and 5 million litres of water every single day. So these are just some of the aspects of these data centers. We all hear the electricity story, but there's a much deeper story behind it. Largest data centers up to 1.6 square million meters. So I'm going to leave you with a few tips of things we can do. Basically, hold on to our devices. You know, don't hoard. Sell, give away. You know, if you're not going to use it, get rid of it, because if you leave it in your desk for 6 months, it loses a huge amount of value because of the nature of the product life cycles. So sell it or give it away, get it out into use. Buy refurbished, remanufactured. They're often better and more reliable. By design to last, repairable. Things like Fairphone. So they're, you know, the structural, is this more the use, minimize notifications, disable location services. You know, the longer the battery can last, the less energy used, the better. Remove unused apps. Think hard before downloading apps. Watch out for greedy apps. Some apps are much more energy intense than others. Keep your battery level between 50 and 80%. Short charges are better in the process. Don't leave it plugged in at full charge. It's not good for the battery because it's constantly getting up to 100 and falling down, then getting up again. Don't drain your battery completely. Use a quality wire. Never charge with wireless. Wireless charging is 50% more energy intense than wired charging, but always use a good quality wire, because otherwise it can damage the electronics. Plug out the charger, dim the screen, use dark mode. I'll be sending this on to Janice in the process. If you want to reuse it, please feel free to reuse it in whatever format you want. Stream in standard definition, another mega bullshit feature, 8K and 4K. Certainly on a smartphone, you can't even remotely see the difference, but the difference in weight is absolutely huge. Don't expose your phone to a lot of heat, and the basic rule, hold on to. You know, these are incredibly intense in the manufacturing, so the longer we hold on to them, the less damage that they're actually doing. So on the laptop, same basic issues. In the first 4, you know, buy designed to last, repair. Buy the lowest spec. I used to always buy the highest spec in the process, but I didn't really need it. You know, the lowest spec we can get away with. Best energy ratings. Avoid large screens. A large screen can be as energy intensive as the entire laptop. avoid heat, focus on airflow. Heat is not good from an energy point of view. So really making sure that your stuff is cooled will make sure that, you know, the fans, etc., won't have to be coming on as much. Reduce monitor brightness if you can. Don't use screensavers. Maximum off after 5 minutes, sleep after 10 minutes. Update your apps and close apps and tabs when not using. You know, browsers are quite energy intense, and lots of tabs and browsers are not so good. Shut down Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, shut down when not using, switch off everything at night. So I've got now racks in the last couple of years where I plug stuff in, and I just turn them off when I'm going to bed, and then the router turns off all the electricity. They say 20% of electricity on average has been lost to what is called vampire power, which are devices that are always on, but they're not being used in the process. And again, hold on to. So that's, and if you're interested in reading more about these issues, I brought out a book a couple of years ago called Worldwide Waste. You can read it for free on gerrymcgovern.com, but if you'd like to buy it, you can buy it there as well. So open to questions and comments. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Gerry. Thank you very much. So where to start, where to move on from this? Christina, you had the book in your hand. Did you already had a chance to read it? And did you find the unmute button? Let's see what happened to Christina, but thank you very much, Gerry. Anybody else? Comments, questions? Let's start with Catherine.
Thanks very much. That was slightly depressing, but very informative. I do a lot of these things already, but is there a brand of laptop that you've found? Because I've got a Fairphone for my mobile device, but I've only ever been able to find refurbished laptops. And then is there a brand that you've found that is better than the rest?
Yeah, there's a new company started up in the last couple of years called Framework Computer. That is worth checking out. I think Dell are doing a lot of work. I don't know if they've launched stuff yet, but they're really doing a lot of work on really creating much more environmentally friendly, like reducing the amount of screws so it's easier to repair. And they've said their new concepts should be about half the carbon offset, but I don't think they've released them yet. But the Framework Computer is worth checking out. They are built to be repairable and in that line of thinking.
Okay, great, thanks.
Okay.
All right, next up we have Thomas.
Yeah, I just wanted to add something really quick. The Teams and Zoom backgrounds we're using all the time, try to avoid it, because it's also something that's run on a computer all the time. It's trying to figure out all the time, where are you, where do you end, and where do you begin? So try to avoid that too. Just a little thing to add.
Yeah, no, great point. Yeah, absolutely. All of these things. And, you know, we were saying at the very beginning, like what I've got tried to do, certainly in regular meetings, is, you know, video off after 5 minutes, meet and greet with video on, you know, then video off. And you know, you can save 90% on energy basically by audio instead of video. So getting in certain habits. And yeah, is it a small amount? Yes, it is, but it's all these small amounts scaled at the billions that make it is the reason why we are consuming the earth at such an extraordinary space. It's because it all seems so inconsequential, the little one more photo, but then when you get to 1.4 trillion photos, it begins to, you know, be an issue.
So I think I saw Christina is back. She held the book in her hand when we started the call. Also had this idea to encourage all of us to turn off cameras, but we already covered that. Christina, did you already have a chance to have a look in the book?
Yeah, I did. I'm not finished reading it, but I really did. Start underlying everything. So basically now it's totally yellow. I don't know if that's sufficient, but I found a lot of good stuff in it. I think that I would actually try to use. I think it's kind of hard because some of the things are like super logical. Like we have been debating like attaching files to emails at work, for example. But that's a long process because it's also like something cultural you have to get rid of. Even though we have themes and OneDrive and everything, everybody always sends an attachment and a link to the file online. So I think we are a long way, but if we are a lot of warriors out there, there will be a change in the world slowly, but it needs to happen fast.
So Gerry, I know you've published, thank you, Christina. I know you published quite a few books. This is your 8th or something like that. Are you finding that awareness is increasing when it comes to e-waste?
Yeah, I think a number of things, even the pandemic and this war has raised a lot of consciousness of, and the chip shortage, that the materials are, not so abundant. A lot of certainly the rare earth materials. And I was talking to a scientist yesterday, who was telling me that essentially we are using rare earth materials and very precious other materials in such microscopic levels in digital devices that they're in essence unreclaimable in any sort of recycling process. So they're kind of gone. We are so dissipating them that they're still in the atmosphere and they're still doing damage, but from a reclaimability point of view. So we're actually getting rid of actual ability to access certain materials within the next 30 or 40 years that we now have in devices. So, and part of that is we used to design 50 years ago to disassemble, and now we don't. We just design to waste. So there is a lot of people talking. There's some growing awareness. But it's hard to know, Janice, certainly I see more stories, but and the right to repair movement has been really positive to see. So we can only be hopeful and try to do the best we can.
Very good. So let's hand it over to Laura, joining us from New Jersey, thereabouts.
Yep, New Jersey. Hello. So I've been following your newsletters for a really long time, the Sunday newsletters, and kind of watched as they turn towards this topic. And it's been very alarming to see, right? And we hear it from all sides. And our modern society tends to push individual solutions for problems that are really systemic, right? And the pandemic is a great example of that. So everyone on this call could do everything on those lists and advocate as best we can. And I'm sure we will make best efforts to do that. It's still going to be a teeny tiny little dent, right? So I'm wondering if there are, broader initiatives or changes coming in, larger companies or governments or other organizations that might be worth following and supporting that you're interested in?
Yeah, no, it's a great point, Laura. And I think we don't want to do what happened to the plastic story in the 70s of blame the consumer, because that was a deliberate PR strategy in the process. So I think, I think the right to repair has been a very positive movement. I think the only way, or one of the only ways we'll see change, is convincing more individuals, but then organizing. So I think the pressure will have to come from the society, because people and organizations, they're not bad, they're not evil, but they're trapped in a system that they're making too much money out of. So I cannot see, Apple had to be dragged kicking and screaming to the right to repair. It did everything it could to undermine it, and now it's trying to slow it, and the same with because it makes too much money, in the pro. So like the companies that are at the top of the food chain are at the top of the food chain because they've created this system. And they're not going to change the system that they're making so much money out of. Their only fear is that the consumer will change. And we have got to, as individuals, were useless. But if we could get together as concerned mothers or concerned parents or concerned, you know, and really, and that will give, because many of the politicians see this problem, but they're scared of the companies because they're bought or coerced by the companies, by big tech or the powerful lobbyists. But if they saw that there was a movement into society, we could see real change. I don't see it coming politically, and I don't see it certainly coming organizationally. I only see it coming societally. And then I see the politics will get behind the society. And then many of the companies will be relieved and say, I'm glad we're now being forced to change, because we could have never changed on our own, because we would just be halving our profitability for the next 3 or 4 years. So I think it's individuals coming together, which was what Right to Repair was and is. You know, it wasn't a big movement. It was lots of, you know, local people who like to repair stuff, and it has become a global movement. So I think it's societal pressure where we really get together in groups and drive change.
Very good. Thank you, Gerry. James, you had a lot on your heart when we started, and I had to cut you off. Reflections from your side?
No, I think it's wonderful. I think it's, you know, it's just, I couldn't agree more about just, you know, there are these little pockets of people coming together. That's why I was so excited to speak to Gerry. I think from my part, and I was chatting to Gavin, who's on the call earlier, you know, what we're trying to do is create some open standards. So, you know, yes, you can have behaviors, and I should have my camera turned off, of course, but wouldn't it be cool if Teams had a green mode, right? Why isn't there a little button that we press and it automatically drops the bit rate or automatically turns it off? Why doesn't, you know, Netflix have a green mode? Why doesn't Disney Plus have a green mode? And every brand can then think of their green mode. And so if we can, you know, start to develop standards, then we can approach it from different ways. So people can change behaviors. To Gerry, to your nice little graph, it's not that technology is completely the enemy. It can be part of the solution as well. So I think we need to sort of drive at that angle too. So I'm really excited to, you know, that this conversation's happening, and thought it was wonderful to hear from you, Gerry. Thank you so much. I'm definitely going to connect and
Absolutely,
yeah,
James.
We'll join forces and
love
and
to,
that's the way to solve it.
absolutely.
I think that's all we had in terms of time. Thank you, James. Much appreciated. Good to have you with us. I'm quite impressed also with you taking the whole big agency carbon negative, right?
Not a term that I love these days. Let's not get into like the evils of offsetting, but yeah, our marketing team like that we're carbon negative. It's a good start. It's our reduction targets that are more important, but all good.
All right, good to see you again. Thank you once again, Gerry. I think that's all we had. Like Gerry already said, he went through the slides relatively fast-paced, but has promised to share them with me. I'll wrap it up in a blog post, and then it'll probably go with the blog post as on those graphs that Gerry's shown. But hopefully they can be of value and help raise awareness around this important topic.
And just a final point, John, just to say, if anyone on the call or in any organization would like something similar, you know, I'm on a track to try and promote these ideas. You know, I'd be more than willing to present, you know, these to any groups or any interested parties. It's you know, any opportunity to spread the word is very welcome.
Thank you. On that note, thank you, Gerry.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great day.